Well, I'm up, David. I actually stayed up and watched the World Series last night, and I got regrets about it, but I did see the endings, which is more than most of America can say.
Our Richard Zane, who's our publisher and managing editor, he's a huge Dodgers fan. He stayed up for it, and I didn't hear him celebrate, but I'm sure if I were anywhere near him within a few streets, he would have been very loud. I heard that George Springer got hurt, and that bothers me because I'm a big George guy.
Yeah, it went on and on and on and on. I always have a theory about West Coast baseball games, which is it's harder to hit home runs because of the marine layer the later the game gets, which means if you get an extra innings, it could go for a while on the West Coast. So that's basically a doubleheader of a World Series night. So I'm sure that feels great.
Josh, I should have pulled this clip, but I wasn't thinking ahead where I want to go with you in this topic. But a week ago, you were on this show, and we talked about the 20-1 record that Brian Kelly has that night at LSU. And then you were very poetic and prophetic, and you kind of were Nostradamus. I'm all over the place here, where you were like, yeah, it's a great place, but if you're beating them down, they'll leave in a hurry, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of stuff you say over the course of a year. Some of it's wrong, and people trash you for it, and then the right stuff, people just kind of forget it. So, number one, golden star on your chest to you for this. I thought that game was pretty easy to see coming. Thought the outcome was pretty easy to see coming. In fact, I kind of thought it was easy to see coming the week before when they went and lost to Vandy. That was kind of wheels in motion time for LSU. So here's the great irony of it. That may not hit you guys there, but it's hitting me watching the national reaction. Everyone's forgotten about A&M winning the game emphatically because Brian Kelly got fired. So everyone's talking about Brian Kelly getting fired. I don't mean you guys, I mean nationally. So there are times, I think, in a college football season where a team announces they're a rival to the world. And that was A&M's flag plant moment in Tiger Stadium. And if Brian Kelly still had his job right now, I think people would be focused on it a little bit more. But they're not. And A&M goes into a bye week, so they're not playing again immediately, so they're not right in front of your face again. None of this is a bad thing. I think it's a good thing because it kind of just delays what I think is the inevitable, which is a Texas A&M playoff appearance and people having to recalibrate how they talk about A&M because a lot of the stuff they said could never happen is happening. But I do want to say this. Okay, so Saturday played out pretty much how I thought it would. You and I talked last week. I thought A&M would win. I thought they'd win comfortably. Maybe not by that margin, but I thought it would be a double-digit victory. So all that's happened. Brian Kelly's fired, all that. All right, moving forward, the one important thing to note, and this is where A&M hasn't been quite yet, is November is the longest month of the year in college football. Not in terms of total days, but if you're in contention, the length of November feels like an eternity. It feels like 9 weeks worth of games because you're breathing air you just haven't breathed. And I know this time last year, A&M was in the thick of a maybe outside in competing for a playoff spot. They're in one of the pole positions right now. So this is going to be a little different. That is also a good thing. It sounds like I'm speaking negatively. It's a good thing. What is going to happen, though, is a bunch of people, and this includes Mike Elko, this includes everyone there, they're being put in positions for the first time. And Oregon had this happen to them last year, and they go wire to wire, and then they get blown out in the first round of the playoff. And I remember talking to people there, and they were like, they had a million different reasons for why they thought it happened. That's not to say that's going to happen to A&M. Everyone deals with their first time being in this kind of position differently, and that's like part B of what I'll be paying attention to with them every bit as much as the game results themselves down the stretch.
Josh, I think they were trending towards firing Brian Kelly, but I didn't really believe it was going to happen until it was that kind of beatdown. Let's just say they would have lost by 10 points, or it just didn't seem as one-sided as it was. Is Brian Kelly the coach today?
It all depends on how sorry about that. It all depends on how the next morning would have gone. So the two things that I think played a factor here. Let's go in reverse order. So, of course, the margin of victory is the first thing. Beyond that, though, I thought for anyone who watched the broadcast in its entirety, ABC basically put on a Texas A&M infomercial the entire fourth quarter was nothing but praise of A&M because they were blowing them out in Tiger Stadium. Anytime there was an LSU mention, it was zooming in on Brian Kelly, dog cussing another assistant coach for executing a game plan that Brian Kelly had approved, or it was zooming in on fire Brian Kelly signs in the crowd, or zooming in on empty seats except for the A&M section, which was full and loud. And then you've got the entire scene that if I were an A&M fan, I'd probably watch 5 times a day, just the post-game celebration in another team's building. That is such a slap in the face to LSU people. They look at that, and it's hard to stomach. It would be no different than Texas doing it in Kyle Field. It'd be no different. And I think that pushed some of them over the top. But then even the next morning, I think if Brian Kelly would have agreed to all the demands that the administration was making about some staff changes, he still would have been there till the end of the year. But when he pushed back, which I don't even blame him for in that regard, but when he pushed back, I think people realized there, hey, what's going to happen eventually is going to need to happen immediately here. And, I mean, that was morning. 6 hours later, he was out of a job. So that moved pretty quickly. It all works downstream of that result. But I think even if it would have been a close game, there's a chance it doesn't happen, but there's still a distinct possibility it does happen the next day.
Josh, I think fit sometimes is a sports talk, kind of like just a talking point to fill time. But I kind of want to go through this because I think when it works, it certainly does work. So when Brian Kelly, when he first got there, it didn't seem like a good fit, but they win the SEC West, they get to the SEC championship game, they have a chance for the playoffs. People are okay with it. I'm going to go now to Coach Elko, who does not care about history, right? I don't care what happened at Texas A&M. I care about what I'm doing with my players right now. Elko seems to fit A&M, and BK never seemed to fit LSU. Am I wrong, at least outside of just the winning and losing, just the way they go about their press conferences, the way they talk, the way they are about that life?
So a couple of things there. All right, let's unpack that. So Mike Elko fits Texas A&M because he embraces what Texas A&M is. But even if he embraces all that and he doesn't win, he won't be a fit because you'll get rid of him because he's not doing what you brought him there to do. Brian Kelly came to LSU, and everyone focused on, like the accent stuff and how clownish some of the early sound bites were and all that. And I had fun with it too, but I maintained none of this will matter if he embraces the resources there and he wins, because that's really what fit is anywhere. He didn't do that. He didn't embrace the resources. Like, that's the biggest crime he committed there, is he took one of the best jobs in the country and he didn't embrace what it had to offer. Also, my smoke alarm's going off if you hear that. All right, we're good. Never mind. House is not on fire, David. Okay, so they looked at him and they thought, and just like I thought, hey, we don't care if you have a Southern accent. By the way, don't fake it if you don't have one. That's a bigger crime. But also, just embrace the resources Louisiana has to offer. Well, he came down there and didn't do any of that and checked out on recruiting. And that's stuff Mike Elko will never do. Okay, that's why I have confidence in saying Mike Elko fits at Texas A&M. He fits there because he didn't go to Texas A&M asking, what can A&M do for me? He kind of went in there saying, what can I do for A&M while A&M does something for me? That's a give and take. That's mutually beneficial. I don't think Brian Kelly ever asked for a second, what can I do for LSU? He just asked, what can LSU do for me? And you know what? That's partly his fault. But I'll also say this. Don't you have to more thoroughly vet him in the hiring process? Now, this sounds like revisionist history or like Monday morning quarterbacking on my part, but I think it's kind of fair. I sitting in Columbus, Georgia, where I was at the time, or I guess I was in Nashville by that time, I didn't have the kind of perspective on Brian Kelly I probably needed to, but I also didn't have the access to him that anyone who's going to hire him had. And you go back and look at all these Notre Dame folks and look at all the reactions they had when he left, and they laid it out. They spelled it out perfectly. I mean, they were basically very prophetic in their own right in talking about what was going to happen with him at LSU. So it wasn't like it was unable to be known. It just wasn't adhered to. It wasn't listened to. Got to be kidding me. All right, we're good again. And you know what? This would be happening even if I were on Zoom right now.
I can barely hear it.
All right, we're good. Well, so the thing is, David, they sent an email out this morning and said from the hours of like lunchtime on, we may have the smoke alarm issues. And man, it may be lunchtime in Europe, but it's not here. Anyway, I think we're good for now.
Hey, man, maybe I want this to be the case. I don't know. I don't know. Sometimes I lie to myself and I don't realize it. But I think Lane Kiffin will. I don't know. Today, I feel like Lane Kiffin's going to stay at Ole Miss. I don't. Is it because they'll probably make the playoffs with the rest of their schedule? I don't know. There's something that tells me he will, but I understand the lure of an LSU, and that would worry me for Lane to go there or Summerall to go there. I understand the lure of Florida. How do you see these coaching musical chairs going, Josh?
So I know everyone is trying to read into every social media post he puts out, or they're trying to basically project pros and cons, and here's why he would go here or there. I don't think he knows what he's going to do yet. I've maintained this with you for a few weeks. I really think if you go into your own life and you think about the biggest decisions you've ever had to make, personally or professionally, but especially professionally, you hypothesize and you live in these theoreticals in your mind, and you kind of think you have a pretty good idea of what you're going to do. But it's not until someone says, here is the offer in black and white, we need an answer yes or no, that you really find out where your heart is. And I think he enjoys the spotlight so much, and he enjoys the theater of all this so much, that he hasn't gotten an offer in front of him in black and white yet. And when it happens, then and only then will he know where he's going to go. And I really don't think he's arrived at that conclusion yet. So, if I had to lean, I'm going to tell you the same thing I told you a couple of weeks ago. If I had to lean one way or the other, I would slightly lean that he leaves. All right, out of the two jobs, theoretically, that he would have on the table, I would think the LSU job is the better job, but then there could be the argument that he fits Florida more, whatever in the world that means. We've already thrown that word around today. But it's not going to shock me in the least if he stays at Ole Miss. I just don't think it's knowable right now because I don't think he knows yet.
Well, what does that look like if you're in the middle of a playoff run?
I don't know. I don't know what it looks like for any of these guys.
Yeah.
If you make the playoff run, that's the great catch-22 of all this. Is if you fire a coach because he didn't have you as a playoff caliber franchise, organization, whatever word you want to use, theoretically you want to go get a guy that can get you where the previous guy didn't. Well, it stands to reason that caliber coach may be in the playoffs, and that which is okay if you have the patience to wait for it. But this attitude of we fired a guy because we want to make the playoffs, but we're not willing to wait for a coach if he's in the playoffs is just mind-boggling to me. And yet that kind of is where some places are, which is why I'm looking at anywhere from Marcus Freeman to Matt Campbell to Alex Golish to John Summerall, all these guys who are of that caliber, but may miss out on the playoffs this year for whatever reason. Like Campbell's roster is beat to death, and Iowa State doesn't make it every year anyway. Freeman lost a couple of early games at Notre Dame. Maybe he gets boxed out with 2 losses. He's definitely out with 3 losses. Golish and Summerall, I mean, it's just the G5, so only one of them can make it at max, period. So maybe that's the needle you have to thread. Maybe it has to be right place, right season. But I don't know how it's going to work out for any of them.
Talking to Josh Pate here on TexAgs Live. Josh, is the Texas A&M message board culture, TexAgs message board culture, and A&M fans in general, the best athletic director in college football since, in a way, it could have been Mark Stoops. They said something. They got Coach Elko. We're 8-0, feeling good about ourselves. And Coach Stoops, I don't know how much longer he has in Lexington.
It's all I thought about Saturday. When I was watching the game, I was watching both of them. Because I went to the Vandy game early in the day, and that's 5 minutes down the road. So I got home for all the nighttime games. It was really nice. And, I rarely on Saturday am I sitting back on the couch with multiple screens, but I got to do it. And I had Tennessee, Kentucky over there. And, of course, I got A&M on the main screen with LSU. And I cannot help but glance over at what Tennessee's doing to Kentucky. And it kind of dawned on me as this huge celebration's unfolding the fourth quarter down in Baton Rouge that, wait, Mark Stoops could have been the head coach here. And I kept thinking about what prevented it, which was A&M fans and not administration there. In fact, administration tried to make it happen. And just to kind of try and play in your mind how different today could be if we change that one thing in history. Because I will also tell you this. I think John Summerall is at Kentucky if that happens. I don't know where Elko is. I don't think A&M would have been celebrating a multi-touchdown win in Baton Rouge. I don't know if Brian Kelly is fired. Maybe he would have done that elsewhere. So many things changed there, not to mention what could still be to come. Like A&M could win the national title this year for all we know. They could win the SEC for all we know. So that, I could not shake that Saturday night.
Josh, a lot of these projections have 4 SEC teams making the playoffs, and I'm like, I think it's 5. I think it's 5. At least as of right now, you'd say A&M, Bama, Ole Miss, Georgia, and Vandy, right? And I know there's going to be some losses here and there, but right now, I think there would be 5 teams, and I don't even know from the Big Ten, what, 3, 4, like maybe 3? What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, I'm waiting to see a couple of things. I think the ACC is going to decide this because there are some really weird scenarios in the ACC, and this is going to sound insane, but trust me, it could happen, where you got 2 or 3 ACC teams making it. The reason is not because those teams are that good. The reason is because their schedule is so jacked up that you've got a bunch of undefeated and one-loss teams that aren't going to end up playing each other. You're talking about your Georgia Techs or your Virginias, your Miamis. And I ran the scenario yesterday. I don't have it off the top of my head, but that could screw things up in terms of getting 5 from the SEC in. Vandy could just lose a couple of games down the stretch, and maybe you just end up with only 4 playoff quality or caliber teams. The Notre Dame thing is something to keep an eye on. So I do see where you're going with that. I wonder, like, take the Big Ten, for example. You're still thinking to yourself right now, I assume your 3 Big Ten teams are Ohio State, Indiana, and Oregon, right?
Yep.
Okay. Oregon's got a loss right now. They have to go to Iowa in a couple of weeks, which doesn't look as easy as it once did. And they also still have to play USC and Washington. And that would give them let's just say they lost one of those games. That's a second loss. I still think that 2-loss resume is good enough, but you do start getting into the territory of asking what's their best win. Because even though I respect their Penn State win, because I think they are responsible for killing Penn State, I don't think the committee will, because they'll just look at what Penn State's record ended up being. So the Oregon situation still hangs in the balance to me a little bit as well. So there's a long way to go. Like I said, November's a very long month. I would lean for SEC teams right now, but I'm very close to leaning your way. So one more week, and I may be convinced to follow you on that.
All right, I'll close out with this. If Vandy goes and beats Texas, they still have a long road. We've talked about November, but they start becoming a team you cannot ignore anymore.
Oh, well, I'm not ignoring them now. And if they go and beat Texas, well, then you're talking about having wiggle room, because they are a team that could lose 2 games and get in. So if they go there and they beat them, I already know their schedule off the top of my head. They've got Kentucky and Auburn at home, and then they go to Neyland at the end of the year. So if they just hold serve at home, they could go to Tennessee and lose, and their 2 losses would be at Alabama and at Tennessee. You're not getting left out of the playoff. I don't think they're getting left out of the playoffs there. So, yeah, this Saturday, to me, it is really, really on the line for Vanderbilt this Saturday. And that's not even to mention, all the talking points around Texas if they let Vandy come in their house and beat them.
Josh, great stuff, brother. Thanks so much for your time. We'll talk to you next week.
I appreciate it, David.
Later, man.